Okay, for this video, I'm going to teach you how to use your drafting table and how to set up a drawing properly. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take one of your cards and you're going to align it using the parallel bar. So what I'm trying to do is I'm taking the bottom edge of my paper and I am making it parallel to my parallel bar. So take a couple of drafting dots once you have that in place. And I'm going to put one on the upper right. I'm not going to put it on the corner because we have to go all the way to the corners for our first diagonals and that will mess up my drawing. But I have two drafting dots holding my paper down. The second thing I need to do is I need to find my drawing pencil. So when you first start out a drafted drawing, you want to start with a very hard pencil. If I had a 4H, I would be using it, but I do not. So I have a 2H. I need to make sure that I have a very sharp point. This point, I just sharpened it, so we're good to go. A couple of these other points, like that is not sharp enough. When I say sharp, I mean really, really sharp. So that looks pretty good. So what I do then, when I'm going to start these diagonal grids, is I take my triangle, any triangle, and I place the triangle from corner to corner. And I draw my line. And you can see I went over, that's A-okay, because you can clean your drawing surface when you're done with your drawing. I place my second line from the other corner to corner. So now I have my diagonals. Now the way that you draw horizontal lines on a drafting board is with the parallel bar. It makes all of my horizontals parallel, hence the name. Make my horizontal line across the middle. And it also allows all of my verticals to be parallel to each other because my triangle just sits right on top. So I'm going to align that with the center and draw my vertical line. Now, so just to go over that one more time. To draw the diagonals, I use a triangle and I simply move it around. When I draw this third diagonal, I simply connect the dots like this. To draw horizontal lines, I use my parallel bar. To draw my vertical lines, I use the edge of my triangle. Now, some of the things that you're going to struggle with are going to be smudges. So a couple of ways to deal with that. One, you need to always make sure your tools are extremely clean. These have not been cleaned and they need to be cleaned. You can use normal household cleaners, 409, fantastic, whatever you have under your kitchen sink, but it needs to be very clean. They do get dirty over time from drawing with graphite and you will have to clean yours pretty frequently. Under the parallel bar, so under the underside, the part that slides across your drawing will also need to be cleaned. Again, it can just be cleaned with a household cleaner, but it's something that will have to be done from time to time. Another thing that's going to help with your smudging is if you start out with a very, very hard pencil. The H pencils, and the higher the number you go, get harder and harder. That means that they're going to smudge less. So always begin your drawings with a very hard pencil, and only when you are pretty much done with your construction and you just need to go back and make a couple of lines really dark would you go to something like a 2B and make those heavy lines, and I'll show you what that looks like. Another thing you can do to help out with the smudging is that you have a kneaded eraser. So let me see here if I can make myself a smudge. What's this? Okay, so there we go. There's a nice smudge. So your kneaded eraser actually does a pretty good job at taking those off. You should know that you're probably never going to get them completely off. Once graphite's on the paper, it's kind of on there. But the kneaded eraser does work pretty well. Another tool that I did not ask you to buy, and some of you probably will not need it, but I do find them useful, is these bags, and they are called a dry cleaning pad. They're not very expensive, but basically it's a bag of eraser. And what you do is when you set your drawing up, you go ahead and you put some eraser on there, And then when your tools slide across, they actually don't touch the surface. They're just basically moving the eraser around, and so you won't end up with smudges. So these are something useful if you find that you really have a big problem with smudges. One thing I would like for you to keep in mind is that when you are constructing these, a lot of times I have students that will come through here and they will make little tick marks on the edge for where they're going to do all their lines. So you might try to measure. This is why you have to construct these grids and not measure them. Because when you make those tick marks, when you come back and you try to draw that line, we always see those marks. There's no way to make the line and get rid of that mark. So we're always going to see that. So please be aware of that. Another thing that I would encourage you to never do is to never start a line and stop it and then try to start again. Again, you're always going to get a little mark. So once you start to make a line, you need to finish it. So just carry it the whole way across. And then with that, you know, you can come in here with a kneaded eraser, but what's going to happen is that you're going to make a spot of it, you know, lighter, and then the rest of the line's not going to be lighter, and you're never going to end up with a consistent line. So, you know, just realize that you're never able to erase a mark completely. You can make them lighter with a kneaded eraser, with another type of eraser, but you're never going to be able to get rid of it. Once it's there, it's there. So just be very careful when you're drawing and when you're drafting. At the end is when you would come back and make those lines. Like for instance, in A1 and A2 where you have these figures is where you would come in and you would make those darker lines. So let's say that I have finished my construction of my grid. I might come in, so again, you know, you have to make sure that you have a very sharp pencil. And then you could come in at the very end to make those dark lines. But again, you never want to, you know, once you make the line, you're done. Don't go back. Don't go back and try to make it darker. It actually just makes it look a little bit worse. So, you know, once you start a line, finish it. Don't go back and mess with it. Something that is probably going to take a good bit of practice on your part is line consistency. So we want to have a nice consistent line all the way from the beginning to the end. This will come with practice. Sometimes what ends up happening is you might start a line really dark, then it might get light, and then you might get dark again. So you want to try to avoid a line that does that. You want a line that starts and has consistency throughout. The other thing that you're going to be practicing in this are different line weights. So you need to be using at least 3 different line weights. So for instance, your diagonals might be pretty light. Then you're probably going to have, I'm going to do a line right here that's a little bit darker. A little bit darker line. And then you want to have a dark line. So there's 3 different line weights right there. But, you know, you even could have something that dark. So just make sure that you're using different line weights. It does take a little bit of practice to learn how to do that with your hand. But it will come once you've done this several times. Okay, so that's how you set up a drawing board and set up a drawing.